Start film in 3, 2, 1. Hello, everyone, and welcome to David Cronenberg's VideoDrome, the film he chose to make instead of making Return of the Jedi. And I have to say, he made the right choice. This film stars James Woods and Deborah Harry. This is, I believe, Deborah Harry's first major film role. I could be wrong about that. And I must say that she does a fantastic job for her first film role. And, of course, would go on to act and obviously continue with Blondie. And here we have Max Wren, James Woods' character, being woken up by a video alarm. I don't know if those existed at any point in the 80s or if you could even set that up. It'd be amazing. I would have preferred this method of waking up every morning than hearing an alarm, that's for sure. So here we find out his plans for the day and the date. So he has an appointment to go meet some gentlemen about some programming. This is probably my second favorite James Woods film, behind Once Upon a Time in America, a much shorter film than Once Upon a Time in America as well. I believe Once Upon a Time in America is about 4.5 hours long, if my memory serves me correct. This is David Cronenberg's, I would say, third best film. My personal favorite is Dead Ringers. Of course, nothing wrong with this film. Also, his third film working with Howard Shore. His first film working with Howard was The Brood in 1979, and then Scanners in every film after that, of course. And I feel like their working relationship with each other really helped Howard Shore have a very large catalog and be able to get that Lord of the Rings trilogy contract. I don't know if contract's the right word. Howard Shore's why am I blanking on this? Where scores are very well done for Cronenberg films. And here we have Max looking at some rather softcore porn photos. Again, he's a small-time television network executive, and he needs that programming in order to compete with the bigger labels. Of course, this is set in Toronto as we see the TTC streetcar roll by. They actually still use those TTC streetcars, although most of the streetcars these days are the new ones that were introduced in 2009. And I say they're new, but they're certainly newer than something used in the 80s. And here we see the sort of introduction with these television show salesmen. And it's only a 13-episode series, which is rather small, but you know, he will have to deal with that. Of course, the character of Max Wren is based off of the person who started up City TV, which is now a big Canadian television network right behind CTV, I believe. It's owned by Rogers these days, whereas CTV is owned by its competition Bell. But I guess back in the 80s, it was still very small time, and they had to do these risque programming options in order to compete and stay in the market. And here we see some footage of Samurai Dreams. Now, on the Criterion Extras for VideoDrome, they actually have an episode of Samurai Dreams. It's only 7 minutes, but still, it's the complete footage. So they did actually film what they have of Samurai Dreams. So that's sort of interesting. nice little addition that you get to see the full 7-minute episode. Of course, there's also an Arrow video release. I don't recall everything that's on the Arrow video release, as I am watching the Criterion release here. So I have knowledge of what is included with that. I know that both include a roundtable discussion episode with David Cronenberg, John Landis, and John Carpenter, as they discuss various things about filming and sort of how the X rating in Ontario at the time made it illegal for David Cronenberg to see most of his films, so he would have to cross the border to watch his own films, which really sucks. I'm glad that's no longer the case here in Canada. And here we get some of buildings in Toronto. I believe I can see the RBC building in the background here. And then we see the satellite moving as they're trying to get some pirated content, if you will. As you just see the satellite slowly, and we zoom in here as Max Wren has sort of this expert video pirate working for him, who is able to get some rather graphic content for his network so that he can compete with the bigger networks, as they're so very small time. This character is also somewhat comic relief, although there isn't a lot of comedy in the film. He does bring a little bit of comedy into the film. Of course, this has also got David Cronenberg's signature body horror in it. Not as much as previous films, but it does have it, as we will see later on in the film. And it's quite graphic and definitely lives up to the standards of body horror from David Cronenberg. So here we see the program for the first time. They call it VideoDrome. And we don't ever see what it's called. It's quite violent and graphic. Of course, there's a lot of things definitely more graphic later on, but this is supposedly just a television program. And of course, the early to mid 80s. It's almost sort of hardcore pornish in nature. Snuff. And of course, the signal gets lost. I don't know if that's necessarily grotesque, my friend, but is what it is. Again, he always calls Max Patron, which is interesting. And he starts eating the sign. And Max goes on his way because he has an interview to go to. And again, sort of showing the past on how you could smoke anywhere at any time. Of course, definitely more so in the 80s than possibly the 90s. And here we're introduced to Nikki Brand and Brian Oblivion, who are somewhat main characters, though we find out a bit more about Mr. Oblivion. Not sure why a radio host would be here, but you know, it is what it is. Define hardcore violence as well. We never see the hardcore violence. We only see the softcore porn programming that they have, but nothing from gory violence, that's for sure. But again, this is the 80s, so definitely more tame than, say, in 2020 or the mid 2010s, or even, I would say, the mid 2000s. Yes. And she mentions overstimulation, and then Max will bring up the dress, and there you go. A very interesting point by Max because he makes a comment about the dress and stimulation and things. Of course, also, Debbie Harry had dyed her hair at this point, so she's no longer blonde, so she almost looks unrecognizable. Um, if you had have told me when I originally saw this film that Debbie Harry, the lead singer of Blondie, is, in a starring role in this film, I would have been like, "What?" Because, again, I've only before this point, I had only seen her, um, as a blonde, so I was like, "Whoa," and it's such a contrasting difference. She still looks great and does a fantastic job throughout the film. And of course, Mr. Oblivion only communicates through television tapes, as we later find out. Which is odd because it's like he's having a live conversation here. But given what we later find out in the film, it's like, how did this come together exactly? And here we see more footage. And again, it's rather tame. They're only whipping him. There's no hardcore violence here per se. Now they say torture and murder, but the actual events in the film are much more violent and murderous than what we see in the small episodes of Videodrome. Oh dear, we find out that it's coming from Pittsburgh now. Yes, Max Harlan says it's coming from Pittsburgh, and not Malaysia, which makes things easier. And here we see the radio station with Nikki. She seems to be a radio therapist. And I must say, for a radio therapist, that's quite the outfit. Of course, if I'm comparing, this to, say, Frasier, where Frasier shows up in a suit rather than a very 80s looking tracksuit or workout gear. Of course, she's not really a therapist, I guess. I guess she's someone, sort of a self help person that will lead people in the right direction. Always like that David Cronenberg's movies take place somewhere in Canada, most of them Toronto, especially after 1980. I love how, like, what's this? Torture, murder. Alright, let's do it. Just showing you sort of the depravity of humanity, even back then, that they'd be very interested in that. It's rather weird how she gets absorbed into the world of Videodrome when she only sees this one episode to our knowledge, so it's quite bizarre that she gets sucked into this world way before Max does. And here we find out that she's into sadomasochism as we see the cuts on her shoulder and things like that. I don't think it's a contestancy, Nikki, but who knows? The coloring is really nice here with the sort of orangey glow coming off their skin. It's kind of weird that there's an orangey glow because you don't see any orange lights, really. So, if we are to take that, all we're seeing is, the light from the TV screen, we'd have sort of a bluish tint. So, it's very interesting choice how we sort of see this orange glow coming from the lighting. It's a very nice effect. And as we're about to see here, as they're sort of transported into sort of the world of Videodrome, as James Woods' character's piercing Debbie Harry's ear. Of course, he's not, doing a fresh piercing, as he's putting them through pre-existing holes, so it's not as dangerous as he licks the blood from the needle. And of course, there's a bit of tasteful nudity throughout the film. Nothing too graphic. Of course, I would almost imagine that this movie might get a PG, well, maybe not PG-13, but somewhere in between PG-13 and rated R. I don't think it would be rated R today. But again, I could be wrong. As definitely more graphic things have come out. But who am I to say? I don't work for film boards, So we see that they are making love, getting into the act. We get this nice close-up shot. But as we slowly zoom out here, zoom, 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 we can see that they are now on the set of Videodrome and not in Max's apartment. So that's sort of the beginning of the transformation for these two characters as they're slowly being brought into this world and not knowing what is real and what is fantasy versus reality. And again, a nice shot of Toronto here where we see the CN Tower now in the background. The CN Tower at this point would have been less than 10 years old. So I don't think it was lighting up at that point. For those of you who don't know, the CN Tower at sundown will light up. And it's been like that, I don't know how long, but ever since I lived there back in 2009, it's been doing that. We see that Max is a little bit sleazy. And of course, Max has another meeting with this character who tries to find him sort of softcore pornish adult content so that his network can compete, as I keep mentioning. And he knows that this character here can get sort of underground programming, and he wants to see if she knows anything about VideoDrome and get a better footage. And so now he wants her to look, see what she can dig up about VideoDrome. And he he finds it interesting because it's just there's no plot, just violence. And of course, we're seeing all these Betamax tapes. And for the most part, not a lot of people know what Betamax is. It's a format that competed with VCR, as did Laserdisc. Um, but for the majority of television standards, they used Betamax up until, you know, DVDs because they were higher quality, whereas VCR was more for public consumption. So while kids in the 80s and the 90s would use VHS tapes, networks would use Betamax tapes because higher quality, but they couldn't hold as much footage as a VCR could. VCR tape could hold about 6 hours maximum, whereas Betamax might be, I believe it was 2.5, 3 hours at most. So higher quality, but less content. Of course, both formats were analog formats, whereas DVD is a digital format. So Nikki here is mentioning how she's going to go to Pittsburgh to try to find an audition for Videodrome, and Max is not having any of it. He's like, no, please don't do this. Stay away from it. Don't do it. And, he really cares for Nikki and doesn't want to see her getting hurt. But Nikki has other ideas. She really wants to get into it. And of course, she's really into sadomasochism, so she goes to burn the cigarette into her breast. And I don't know how painful that is, but it leaves, a burn mark. Hooray, I guess. And hands Max the cigarette. And we sort of get this unsure moment. Now, for this scene, it's actually filmed at night, and they ended up shining lights through the windows to make it appear like it was daytime, but they ended up renting out the restaurant um, after closing. So that's how we kind of get the visual that this is taking place during the day. So, very interesting. And here we get the report of whether she has found anything on Videodrome or not. Yeah, can almost give you a headache doing that. And of course, James Woods' character, Max Wren, is a play on the motorcycle, a Wren Max, as David Cronenberg is quite the, or was quite the enthusiast on bikes in his youth. In case you were wondering where the name came from. So here we have the warning about how trying to dig into VideoDrome could be very dangerous, and Max should kind of stay away. Yes, I think Max kind of realized that it was snuff, but he also doesn't really think that it's snuff because he feels like it's almost too realistic to be real. As he just said, that it's easier to fake that kind of thing than make it real. And here he finds out that that Brian Oblivion is responsible. And so now he goes to try to track down Mr. Oblivion. So he takes a double deal that the program that she brought him, they'll do a double package, so it'll be that plus Videodrome or the information for saying. So she kind of gets something out of it. Yes, Max, the world is a shithole. But, and I get that it's business is business, but it's kind of a shit deal, my dude. So now Max goes on the hunt. A lot of smoking in this film, although that's pretty standard for most films in the 80s and early 90s. Even films today have smoking, and over the last 20 years. It's weird that he puts out this cigarette because no one else seems to. So here we are in sort of this television um addiction center. That's almost what it seems to me, because you see a lot of people coming in to go watch TV, um get something to eat, so maybe it's almost like a soup kitchen as well, just a place for people to go to watch some television and get something to eat. And here we have Max just kind of checking out this place and trying to find Mr. Oblivion. Not exactly sure what was on that screen, but it almost either looked like a rat inside of a corpse or a beating organ. Hard to say. As we just see sort of this shady, really run-down environment just so people can kind of have their own space when it comes to watching television. So here we have the introduction of Brian Oblivion's daughter. So we come into the good doctor's room, office. Looks very fancy. But the good doctor is not in. Of course, we get this overshot of the facility from the window. again, sort of seeing television addiction or using television to sort of get themselves back together. Takes a seat. I like how there's multiple formats. I wonder if if he had have said laserdisc, if there would have been a laserdisc. Interesting how he answers Videodrome and not a format. Still never gave her a format. So he gets a Betamax tape anyway, but I suppose he also has a VCR. So here we have Max once again watching Videodrome and just some voices playing and speaking about Videodrome. As he's just writing on a notepad. I almost thought that was a receipt, but then I can see the writing and I was like, "Oh yeah, that's not a receipt. Might be written on receipt paper, but not a receipt." And it looks like Max has purchased a gun. I'm not sure what kind of gun that is. Pops the clip right out. You can definitely see that he's not someone who's familiar with guns based on how that magazine just pops out. And now he quickly tries to hide the fact that he has one. So Nikki's on vacation. Max kind of freaks out, and now the hallucinations are really starting to begin as you see him slap, and it turns out to be Nikki, and then it's back, but he never slapped anybody. See, she's like, "What are you talking about that you've hit me? You didn't hit me." And now you can see sort of concern for Max here. And yeah, interesting. If you can set a TV to be on a timer, because it seems like he set TV to be on a timer. I don't know how that would work. If anybody does, please feel free to let me know. And of course, there's this just random photo of Hitler in a tutu, and there we see more hallucinations from Videodrome as we kind of see that the tape was briefly alive for a second. But it doesn't seem to be. So now we're starting to really see Max start to slip into what is real and what isn't real. as he puts the tape into his Betamax player. I don't know when movies were coming for home consumption. I believe it was the late 70s off the top of my head, although I might be misremembering and thinking that Laserdisc came out in the early 70s, but I cannot recall. And then you sort of see, like, the video is speaking directly to him. And it's a little weird as he's explaining what VideoDrome does and how there are hallucinations and not hallucinations. And we now see the death of Brian Oblivion. And it's not sure whether Max is hallucinating this whole scene, but we're later going to see something about Mr. Oblivion. As you see him say. And then Nikki shows up. So there's this very hallucinogenic feel now on what is real and what is not real. And here is where we get, or is it here or is it later? No, it's here. Probably one of the best effects in the movie where the TV starts to come alive. Also, the fact that Max has an Atari 2600 is amusing. Of course, the Nintendo Entertainment System wouldn't come to North America for another 2 years at least. If we are saying that this film takes place in 1983. So here we see that the TV has come to life. Goes inside of it in a way. And definitely into that hallucinogenic mindset now as the TV starts to bubble out. And just sort of like a balloon or like silicone or something. You can feel it. And that effect is incredible. And here we are back at the TV rehab center at Brian Oblivion's office. And surprise, Max is already there. So now he goes to figure out what the hell is going on. Yeah, it is what he said that it bites. And then there's this small realization. Oh, it wasn't a pirate satellite dish, my friend, as we'll find out later. It was all a plant. So here we find out that Max has been exposed to the Videodrome, and he is beginning to be under a spell, under um mind control. And Max is concerned now, and he's confused, and he wants to know more, and things are about to get a lot worse for him. Oh yes, you will disappoint as he's nothing more than videotapes. That's a lot of tapes. Kind of ridiculous that you would do 3 or 4 tapes. And let's just think that it might be an hour each or something ridiculous like that. That's a lot. So now that we found out that Brian Oblivion is dead and that was a tape, the question is, how did that work? Because it's assumed that he's coming to them live via satellite or something like that. Or it was all just a tape. So who put the tape in, and how did that work? So just hands him 4 random Betamax tapes to figure it out. So now he's looking for Harlan to figure out if he's been watching the feed. I don't know why I was struggling with that. Of course, there was no feed, as we'll find out later. Again, my apologies for any spoilers that I've given out. Now this right here he's inside of the couch. The couch is a prop. And he's actually standing the entire time. And James Woods would have to sit there for 12 hours a day to do these scenes. And they had to hire masseuses to continually massage his legs while he's standing there. So, the blood can keep flowing and that there's no pain or anything. Because obviously, if you're standing for 12 hours straight and you're very, very still, and so they can get this effect going off. Again, this is all practical effects. He notes that it was quite painful to do these scenes. Because for at least the couch ones, the couch scenes, he's just standing there for 12 hours, which really must have sucked, as he's just inside the couch. And we get our first instance of body horror here as well, as there's this just gaping, almost living hole inside of his stomach that's sort of devoured his hand. And now his hand comes out, but the gun is gone, and his stomach is back to normal after hallucinating. Welcome to Videodrome, Max. Enjoy your stay. as he really tries to find where the gun went, as now he's going to struggle with trying to figure out what is reality and what's not reality. And here we have the phone ring. And now he's going to be introduced to Barry Convex. The actor who plays Barry Convex, we will later see him in David Cronenberg's The Fly. He plays the gynecologist in The Fly. So, a lot of people who act in a David Cronenberg film, not necessarily like main characters or anything, but side characters, a lot of them will appear in multiple films that Cronenberg does. Not all of them, mind you, but quite a few. Now, I wonder how hard it would be to get a television to work in this fashion, because keep in mind, this is the 80s. This isn't today or anything like that. I have a friend who has a 32-inch television in her van, and I'm like, okay, that makes sense how you got that to work. You've got solar panels and things like that to help not drain your battery, but I imagine that in the 80s, solar panels and things wouldn't be a thing, so it's like, what the fuck would you have to do to get a television to work in a car and not drain the battery straight to hell? Especially since there's a VCR in there too. At least I think that's a VCR or Betamax player. It looks like a 3-inch screen. Hard to tell. It's very tiny. So here we are to meet Barry Convex. No sign that the door would be unlocked or anything like that, so I kind of find it weird that there was no one to greet him at the door. I mean, obviously they knew he was coming, but still. And there we see some nice glasses. Definitely some standard ones, and then you've got some that are unbelievably 80s. Like, holy shit. This pair that's coming up. Like, holy fuck. You want to talk about the 80s? Look no further than these glasses. What the hell? I don't know if glasses have trade shows. I could be wrong. Not something I'm necessarily into either. Conventional? Alright. Whatever. Now, for this scene that's coming up where he puts on the helmet, it's not actually James Woods in the scene. It's actually David Cronenberg, because James Woods didn't feel comfortable putting it on as he felt he could get electrocuted, because I think there was about an inch or 3 of water, so he thought he would get electrocuted. So David put the headset on for the scene. Of course, you don't see Max's face or anything, so you wouldn't know that unless you were told. So it's still very seamless, but that is Cronenberg's cameo in the film because you don't hear his voice or anything. You just see him with the helmet on. And of course there's no lighting or anything like that. So here we have the helmet on. I find it weird that DOS is on there. Because literally you don't see anything. You just see, I mean, from his perspective anyway, of skin or face. Although you do get the. There you go. And of course, we now kind of get a sight of him being a villainous asshole. You assume that that's going to happen, that it's just going to hallucinate, but whatever. So, yeah, there's the shot that it's David and not James. And there's our villain now fully in view. And here comes the hallucination as Howard Shore's score kind of comes in. It's interesting that he says there's water when in that shot right there's no water. But in this scene coming, we can see a bit of water. A very weird necklace. Looks like gold leaves. I don't know why you would wear that. So now we're back into the VideoDrome set. And he's just got this whip. And then it's a TV. So Nikki hands him, and then you're gonna whip a TV. A very interesting scene. And now, of course, with the helmet off, we once again switch to James Woods. It was literally just for that scene, but I don't recall, like, you don't see any water, so it's very weird that water was involved at all. So, he's whipping Nikki, or who he perceives to be Nikki, but as we're about to see as the shot pans, that it is very not Nikki. But I doubt he realizes that. Because he's not looking at the screen. And then he wakes up in his apartment. Not exactly sure how he got to his apartment, but he wakes up there. And then he rolls over. And he's like, what the hell? And we see the corpse. But he doesn't think he's hallucinating here, so once again he sort of losing his grip on reality and fantasy. He doesn't know which is which. So he somewhat has a panic, and Carl calls Harlan over to take some photographs because he doesn't believe what's happening. And it looks like the time is 5:57 on the Betamax player. Now, apparently for this scene right here, the actor who plays Harlan was very sick with the flu for this scene. He's a real trooper for doing this while sick. He doesn't sound sick at all, which is the more impressive part. So Max is still freaking out about what he's seen, and of course, Harlan sees nothing. And that's because there's nothing there. And so Harlan's like, what the fuck are you doing? This is some bullshit. And he's just like, what the fuck? Because he doesn't believe what's happening. Nothing there. Yes, and then there's the outburst and everything. Yeah, so Max is being run ragged. He doesn't know what's going on. He can't tell reality from fiction, and he's about to get a rude awakening right now. And again, probably not the best move to call somebody at, before 7 to come over and freak the hell out on them. I don't know exactly how I would react in that situation either. He's about to find out why Harlan hasn't had any, hallucinations. Because you see, ladies and gentlemen, as he gets downstairs, we find out that Harlan is a double agent. Nope. Because there's never been one. He's just been putting in fucking videotapes. And there's the knock on the door. I like how even in his mood to betray Max, he still calls him Patron. And then this asshole comes into the frame again, and you find out that he's a massive dick. wonderful years, he says. It's like, yes, because my plan has come to fruition. I'm getting paid lots of money to fuck with you. So now the question is, how long has he been exposed to VideoDrome? Has it been 2 years, or has it been slow? Because morbid curiosity, good sir? Again, morbid curiosity. Or, as Max says, business reasons. So, now our villains are in full view. I don't know if that's true. I mean, sure, the Cold War was going on. Everyone was going soft at that point. Television station? Oh, cesspool. Oh, there you go. So, the plan is to get VideoDrome to actually play over the air. Which is weird because you think, all this stuff would have been airing the entire time anyway, but I guess not. Are you sure about that? Yes, he is for real, Max. Analyze them how? So here we see the new tape breathing, and it's like, what the hell is going on? And then here we see the sort of living stomach that apparently can act as a tape player. And he inserts it. Interesting how, the wind machine type thing going on. And the other weird thing is that there's no slime coming off of his hand. Although, again, this is all just hallucinations. So, of course, there would be no real slime. Give it to us, Max. Give us Channel 83 by killing your partners. So now he sort of just goes on this sort of murderous rampage as the hole is still open and the gun comes out, which is a bit odd. So now there's that real instance of are these hallucinations or are these real now? Because we see that the gun is covered in this slime and his hand's covered in this slime, and then he, has that hole. And then you sort of see the gun sort of becoming attached into his hand. A really nice, sort of grotesque effect. Like I said, this movie does have body horror. It just takes a while to really, really, really get there. As he now becomes one with the gun. Also, for a guy who has a gun slowly being integrated into his hand, he sure is quiet. I imagine that that's pretty painful. Like, literally, his hand is becoming a gun. And you think you'd be screaming in pain over that. Great effects here. Simply fantastic. Absolute, just fantastic stuff. I don't know how long that takes to do every day, because I imagine multiple shots would have been needed to be taken. Now, of course, his hand's all not a bunch of gunk and fused gun. So now Max is just a zombie going to kill his partners. Very nonchalantly, just like, nah. Just don't answer the phone, please. Used to write in high school. Is that a problem that you two exist? The amount of damage that came off that gun really makes me think that that is not a simple pistol, nor could it actually do that much damage in reality. Nice blood effects there. Jesus, look out. And of course, nobody's thinking that like, it's very weird. Shoutouts to Canada Dry Machine. Is that Dr. Pepper in there? Couldn't really see there, but I'm pretty sure that machine had Dr. Pepper in it. Get the fuck out of there. So now he's just running through these back streets. Inconvenient window panel. But yes, he's just running away. Pulls out the gun again from the stomach wound thing and then puts it in his pockets. And then somehow the tape tells him to go back to Ray Mission and kill Oblivion. So, also something about hurting. Seems very weird that, they wouldn't have killed her a long time ago. Like, say 11 months ago. But I suppose they needed the TV station, so they needed to keep her alive so that Max could continue talking. Alright, elbow the window open. Unlock the door. Kind of lucky he didn't, cut himself. Because the elbow wasn't really that protected, so. Hey! So, he's looking. Can't find. Dinner looks to have been eaten. So now he comes to kill Bianca. and he sounds like a goddamn robot. And then she knows exactly what's happening. It's very robotic sounding. Yes, an assassin. Not exactly sure how they're transmitting, like, kill this person. And there you see the hand now fully developed into this grotesque gun fusion mess. And it looks fantastic. Wonder how long that took. Yes, yes, they did. Oh dear. So now Max is being deprogrammed from VideoDrome and from their control. Also, this is a nice effect too, with the hand and sort of just this television screen. So he's in the bleeding TV. Just great. So now he's been deprogrammed. And has changed the program and is now out to get revenge. Long live the new flesh. Yes, he has to take revenge. Kill them all. Oddly enough, this movie didn't get a sequel, which is kind of odd because some of David Cronenberg's other movies, like The Fly, got a sequel. Scanners got 2 sequels, oddly enough. I don't know if it deserved 2 sequels. I never saw them, so I don't know how good they are, and I've never seen The Fly 2. But of course, David Cronenberg is not involved with any of the sequels. Also, this is odd, the traveling television that has a signal. And there he is, his first target. Nah, he just kinda ignores you and moves away, my dude. Now, you may be thinking that he's crazy for moving in actual traffic. That's standard Torontonian stuff right there, just moving in moving traffic. Used to see that all the time when living in Toronto. So now he's just waiting for his opportunity to get in the back. I don't know how personal checks were ever a thing that people could just accept. So now he has his way to get to the back. Didn't really need to fight anybody or anything like that. He just needed to wait for the gentleman to look away. So here he is looking for Harlem. He finds Harlem. And there's a bit of a witty retort between the two. Trade show. What's in the box? About 13 years, 13 years, 14 years before What's in the Box became a famous movie phrase. Who would you like me to visit, Harlem? Who? And here we see a more grotesque, more flesh videotape. I'm sure you do. But guess what, bitch? You are in for a surprise. A surprise that, quite frankly, you deserve. Come on. Come on. As his wounds, and then surprise. And it turns out to be a bomb. Not only did you lose your arm, but something's a ticking away. See you in hell. Or Pittsburgh, but hell. He just steps through the hole. Not a super graphic death. The explosion just kind of happens and Harlan's corpse just disappears. Still a very nice gore effect, though, on his hand / the bomb. So now Max arrives at the trade show. It looks rather small to be a place for a trade show to happen. I like how he just nonchalantly picks up the pamphlet. It's like, do you really need a reason to pick up the pamphlet? And you know what's funny? It took me till now to realize what the hell this whole thing is, and it's the fact that the guy can't see, and now that he can see through the glasses, he's able to sculpt the thing, and then there's just this dancing girls thing to introduce our villain who thinks he's so cool. And I'm pretty sure that the glasses are sort of like a front. Yeah, we sell glasses. That's kind of just our way to do things to fund our more sinister research, kind of like Umbrella from the Resident Evil series, where pharmaceuticals was their business, but instead of really selling pharmaceuticals, we're doing biological weapons. The Manichi line, which fucking means nothing to anybody. Alright. And then the score starts playing as Max is like, now this is my opportunity. There's no one here. So, fuck you, and then he sort of realizes who's there, and he just sort of cockily shows the gun. He's like, "Ah, shit." And now for probably this is the best death scene um since Scanners, although it's better than anything in The Brood, I'll tell you that much. Just how the head and his body just starts to explode, and it's so disgusting. And if it wasn't for the head explosion in Scanners, that would have been better than anything in Scanners too. But because of that head explosion, it's like, oh yeah, this is great. And now Max still on the run because again, they assume that he's killed people. And so he's a wanted man. So he squeezes through this fence and goes to a decommissioned boat. A boat that has seen much better days. Again, no shot of the CN Tower or anything. You just sort of get these shots of the water in front, and there's no sort of shots of the skyline or anything. And here we go. Just tries to get inside this boat. Guess who would look for anybody in a dilapidated boat? Answer is nobody. Here we have the final sequences of the film as Max goes to hide in the boat. It's not really known if he's been hiding in this boat for days or if he literally just hasn't slept and killed Harlan and oh my god, why can't I remember his name? Barry. Um all in with the span of like let's say 12 hours or something like that. But there's obviously a mattress and things there. So this is his life now. Or so he would have you think. But it isn't. Yeah, you can kind of see him looking around, so it kind of makes it seem like he hasn't been here until now, but clearly someone has. So now he's trying to figure out what the hell is he going to do now. And then he hallucinates a television. Because why not? And it's Nikki. So here we have Nikki saying that you've done great, you've damaged VideoDrome, you haven't defeated them, but you've crippled them for a bit. And you must evolve to the next step in order to stop VideoDrome. So, what is the next phase? Well, unfortunately for Max, it's the end for his physical form. So, he's about to commit suicide in order to get to the next step in his evolution. Or the new flesh. Very interesting way of hallucinating how a TV just kind of pops in there. Although I am noticing now for the first time that it says Videodrome on the top right corner or top left corner. of the screen. So you now see the video of Max standing there and kneeling before pulling the trigger. And we get another great effect here where just all these organs and things pop out of the TV as Max does the shot. And now Max, realizing what he has to do, he now performs the deed. Of course, there are apparently 3 endings to this film. I don't know why, but nothing has included the other 2 endings to the film. Would have been interesting to see, because I believed all 3 endings are filmed. So now, Max in the real world performs exactly what Max on the television has done. So here we have it. He pulls the trigger and smiles. We don't see anything. Film cuts to black. And this has been VideoDrome. Thank you for watching. Thank you very much.